What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Powered by Primus. And in today's video, we're going to be doing tips on the Trasnformers TCG. Now, I'm going to give you guys 10 tips. Now, these are not in a top order, so number 9 may be more important than number 1. Whatever the case is, I'm not doing them in a specific order, but these are 10 tips that I'm going to give you guys to hopefully help you get better at the Trasnformers TCG. Now, some of them you may already know, some of them you may not, and you may know all of them. But this is just definitely some things that I've learned over the course of this game, also over the course of a very long period of running in TCGs and collectible card games. So it is definitely 10 tips that I think are very, very helpful when it comes to the game. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is kind of an obvious one, but actually a lot of people don't do, and that is decide who gets to go first before looking at your cards. Now, again, it may be, what? That's duh. But a lot of people actually don't. I see tons of people who will look at their 3 and then they'll decide after they want to go first or not. And it just kind of changes up the gameplay quite a bit as far as what's in your opening hand and deciding who gets to go first. What you should really be doing as soon as you guys put down your teams, or you can even wait and do that after the fact, whatever the case may be, is just go ahead and roll rock, paper, scissors, however adults want to handle going first. Then you guys decide who gets to go first, and then you guys can go from there, do your cuts, draw your 3 cards, whatever the case may be. But it kind of sucks when, you normally would want to go first, but then you look in your hand and you're like, oh, I got this card that's just going to blow them out of the water. No, you go first so I can actually play the card on my first go, and that can just definitely change up things quite a bit, and then it just makes things really awkward. So make sure that you always do choose who gets to go first before anyone looks at their hands and before the game even starts. Now, the next one we're going to talk about, and we're going to kind of get a lot of these really easy ones out of the way, is good sportsmanship. Now, it's really common in every card game and every game just around the world, really. Sportsmanship is always a really iffy one. You get some people who are really awesome about it, and then you get some people who are just complete douches and don't care about the sportsmanship. They're just there to play the game. They're just there to beat you. And that's not a wrong mentality, is what I will say. Although it's not the preferred mentality, it's not wrong. I can't get mad at someone for just wanting to play the game and not wanting to help me when they are just doing what they're doing. It's easy. But I like to think that I have really good sportsmanship. You guys will see probably in a lot of our videos is that there will be some times where an opponent will go to do a play and I'll think that it's wrong, or I will show them how a different play would be even better, and then they're like, oh, wow, that makes way more sense. Yeah, I'll do this play instead. And even if it causes me to lose the game, it's really important for me to point out that play to the other person. If you guys did watch our last video where I was playing a blue burn deck and I was going against Kevin in his Starscream deck, there was a play, and I think it was game 3, where he played Espionage and chose to get rid of a marksmanship from my hand, but I didn't have any ranged characters, so taking the marksmanship would have been the absolute wrong thing. So I advised him to pick a different card because of this, and he was like, oh, well, duh, I just thought that this card did 2 damage. This is a way better play, thank you. And no matter how the game pans out, it was just better for me to do that because now I help him get better as a player and hopefully notice those things in the future. And then also, I want to play at my best, and I always want to play against my opponent at their best. I don't want to rely on winning because I took advantage of something that they didn't see. Now, granted, maybe we're playing in a tournament for $100,000. Maybe I'd play a little differently. But ultimately, good sportsmanship is really, really necessary in so many games. The other thing that's really important about good sportsmanship, especially right now in this card game, is that we're still growing a community, we're still growing player bases, and I don't think we're anywhere near that stage where our goal is to sit down and just smash our opponent and then they don't want to play the game anymore. We really need to make sure that we're helping new players out, helping inexperienced players out, and even if they're playing a Dinobot for the first time, they've never played Dinobots before, but they've been playing the game for a while, if they go to make a suboptimal play, it's nice of you to point that out for them and be like, hey, this could be smarter. Oh, hey, try this in the future. Oh, I looked at your deck during that gameplay. I thought your deck was really good, but I saw that you didn't have any Pieces or Tyrannies in your Dinobot deck. Man, this card is really good because it's a double orange. Whatever the case may be, really always trying to help your opponent as best as you possibly can. And I hope that in that situation, your opponent would also do the same for you. is reminder dice. Now, dice is something that I use for this. All I do is put a simple dice on top, but you can honestly use anything that's lying around. You can use a screwdriver, you can use hand sanitizer, you can even use a cell phone if you want, whatever the case may be. But like I said, I use a simple die. Now, the reason why I do this is to remind myself that there's something that is supposed to happen before I touch my deck. Now, if I have like a data pad where I'm making sure that when I attack that I have to draw first before actually doing anything. So like I said, again, even a data bank that makes me draw 2 before the start of my turn. If my opponent has an ability, like let's say they have an Alpha Bravo, and that when I attack with a plane that I am running or whatever else, they have to do 1 damage, or I have to do 1 damage to it. This just makes sure that I check the entire board state, check my hand to make sure that there's nothing that I miss before I touch my deck. After I do notice whatever it is, I will then move the dice off. Let's say that we'll go into our flips for whatever, and then if I need to remember it again, I put the dice back on top. And again, it just makes sure that I check everything before moving on with just randomly drawing a card, because let's say you happen to draw this card and it's just the best card ever, but I was really hoping that I would have gotten to flip it off of my data pad again, and I'm like, well, wait, no, can I take it back now? And then you have to hope that your opponent is a really nice person, or sometimes they may not be and just say no, and then it's honestly kind of your fault. So this is just something that I do just to make sure, again, that I'm always, if I need to remember something, that is there to put me into check. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is threat detection, threat priority. It's kind of a couple of different names for it, but it is probably one of the most important, if not the most important thing that you can do when it comes to playing this game. Now, let's say that this is my opponent's team. We sit down, we're sitting there shuffling up. We haven't even begun the game yet. And now I am already evaluating out of these characters, which one is my target, which one is going to be the one that is going to beat me, and which is the one that's going to cause me the absolute biggest hurdles within the match. Now, let's be honest, anytime that we're up against an Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, he's probably the character that is going to always be your target. He's always probably going to be, look at that glare, he's probably always going to be the one that is going to be the one that's KOing you. However, it's really easy to lose sight of these kind of things when it comes to playing inside of your match. Sometimes, let's say your opponent does throw that hot rod first, and you're like, cool, this is my chance to beat up a hot rod really bad. I'm going to go for all these things and really hurt them. But you're really hurting yourself in that scenario. Now, you really want to make sure that when it comes to who your threat is, who you need to take out in order to win, you have to make sure if you have a really good card in your hand that's going to give, let's say you're running a heavy blue list and you're running a bunch of small characters and you have the bigger they are. Well, you're like, okay, well, I want to definitely make sure I save that bigger they are for this prime for when I attack, not using it just on this hot rod, because this hot rod and this flame war are really just means to your end when it comes to this prime. They are there just to make sure that they take little damage and that they really help Optimus Prime do his thing. So you really need to make sure that you focus on that character as your threat. Make sure that when you do have a big card, make sure that you try to plan out your turns. Okay, I'm attacking here, then he has to attack, and then that's going to expose his prime at the end, and then I get one big hit, and then we get to straighten, and I'm probably going to lose sight of the Optimus Prime again. So I need to make sure that you really maximize on which character is going to be beating you. You know, I know that this Optimus Prime is going to be digging up cards, you know, such as Plasma Burst or Marksmanship and all these different things in this list, which is a deck that I'm going to be showing you guys later on this week. It is super awesome. But you know Optimus Prime is going to be the one that's going to be carrying the team, and if you can KO him and relatively quick and efficient, then you have a way better chance of winning the game, whereas rather than wasting your cards and wasting your attacks on these littler characters that truly don't matter, it's always really evaluating on your opponent's side which characters are gonna be finishing you off and trying to take advantage of that and making sure that you get the upper hand on them with this same thing. Another character that might be pretty easy to spot as far as when it goes is if you're coming up against an RC. Now, if you're running a heavy orange list yourself, now maybe RC isn't as much of a threat. Maybe it's the Grimlock that they're running with it, or maybe it's some other type of really big aggressive character that they're going to be running with it, and you're like, okay, cool, this RC is kind of annoying, but I know that she's doable. I'm going to focus on this other character. But
if you're running a heavy blue list, now RC, when she's in this mode, gets Pierce equal to her attack. So now she becomes a way bigger threat to you because you're like, oh, well, if this other character attacks me for 10, I can block 7 of it, I'm okay. Whereas if she attacks me for 10, I just straight up take 10 damage. So you need to evaluate RC in now this new scenario that she is your biggest threat and you need to get her off of the table before she can swing, or even if she does, make sure that you feed the right character for RC to be able to go into. Let's say maybe you have a small character that's kind of useless on your team as well. You throw that character out. So if the RC does attack, it goes into that character that doesn't really hurt you as much, rather than throwing out your biggest threat and then your opponent just gets to KO your character in response, and then you're in a really, really bad spot. So again, threat detection, just knowing your target is probably one of the biggest things that you can definitely do in this game. If you are wasting cards and wasting attacks on characters that don't matter so much, then you are probably going to be losing the game. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is pip control, or just always remembering what your pips are like. Now, in some decks, this really doesn't matter. Let's say you're running a heavy orange list or a heavy blue list. It doesn't really matter, let's be honest. You can, kind of remember, oh, I have 4 or 5 whites left in the deck, so this is what I know I'm going to be able to flip a white, possibly, and get more on defense or more on offense. That can sometimes be relevant. But I primarily want to talk about things such as like Metroplex or Chromia or Drag Strip or whatever these, Slipstream, whatever these very specific characters that require and need those specific pips when it comes to flipping. It's really important to remember what you have. Now I'm going to be running here with my Metroplex deck. I do run 9 white pips in this list, so it is very important, especially with Metroplex, to remember what you have. Now looking at my hand here, I know that I have 1 white in my hand and I have a blue. So that means that I should have 8 whites within these 2. Now because you're always allowed to look through your scrap pile, what we're going to do here is we're going to grab this and we're going to go through it and say, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now because I have 6 in my scrap and I have 1 in my hand, that's 7. I know that I have 2 left in my deck, so if I'm about to attack here with the Metroplex, I know that my proc is going to work. The next thing that I'll do is, now that I know that I have 2 in here, I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I have 6 cards in the deck, 2 of which are white. Now granted, that means that I have a decent percentage to be able to naturally flip them off an attack, but that's still nowhere near safe enough for me, especially when we have this height advantage. So what I would do is I would go to play the height advantage, knowing that now I'm probably going to proc. So there was a white, and then because there's a white, I get 2 more off the top. And then we get our bold 4, which would allow us to be able to shuffle and get more. We're obviously going to be able to proc our ability here, which is really cool. But like I said, that way you have to always know what is in the list. Now, even if you would have taken this away, I didn't have any other characters out and I naturally attacked, we'd get 2 and then 2 for the white, which wouldn't have been enough to proc, and that would have been a huge problem, seeing as how you always want to proc with Metroplex. Now let's go with the same scenario. I still have the 1 in my hand, except this time I have 7 in my scrap versus 6 in my scrap, so I only have 1 left in my deck. So now looking at it though, I only have 4 cards left, which means that I can either do something kind of crazy, and we can either play this height advantage and hope that we have to shuffle and get 2 more out of that, or get 1 more out of it, seeing as how we know we have 1 left in this deck, or we can just naturally attack and see how it works. Well, obviously, if we just naturally attack and see how it works, we wouldn't have even gotten the white pip off of the start. We'd have to hope that that white pip was there. But even if the white pip would have been on top versus on the bottom of this, you can see that we're not going to be able to proc because we didn't get a second white, because we didn't do our math correctly, and we didn't know that there was only 1 left in the deck, which is a really bad thing to do. So again, especially with white pips, sometimes with green pips, it's important to know what's left in your deck. And the one good thing about it is you can always look through your scrap pile, which is a big thing that I always recommend, so you guys can always know what could possibly be left in your deck. Now the other benefit to being able to do this in heavy orange or heavy blue lists, I can't pick this card up, come here, to doing it in these lists, is knowing how many doubles you have left. Let's say you're running a more aggressive orange list, right? And you're running 6 of the double pip cards, you're running 3 improvised shields and 3 pierce through tyrannies. Well, you're allowed to look through your scrap pile, so let's say you're planning some math on your opponent's character and you're like, cool, if I flip a double orange, I guarantee they're dead. Well, you look through your hand, I don't have any there, and you look in your scrap pile and you're like, oh crap, all 6 of my double oranges are in my scrap pile. Now I know I can't rely on that double orange because they're all away. versus if I looked at my scrap pile in the same list, we only had 4 cards left in our deck, and let's say we know that we had 3 double oranges in here, we know that we're going to just completely run that opponent over. So it's really, really nice to always make sure that you know where some of your very specific cards are going to be, and it's usually with pip orientation or pip colors, going, okay, cool, even press the advantage. Let's say I'm like, oh, I go through my entire scrap pile. I don't have any. I know I run 1. I don't have 1 in my hand, which means one of these last 4 cards is going to be the one I need. So I need to make sure that I leave a card in my hand this turn to be able to fish that up. Same thing for enigmas. Let's say you know that you need an enigma next turn, but you have 1 card in your hand left and it's a grenade launcher, and you're like, I really want to play it, but you need to hold it back to make sure that when you do flip that enigma, that you can swap the card in your hand for that enigma. So again, making sure that you always remember what your pip orientation is like as far as what is left in your deck and what is in your scrap pile. All right, the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is combat damage and really making sure that you guys do math. It is very simple to mess it up, and I'm going to be showing you guys one little trick that I do that now I've gotten a lot more people to do, and it makes everyone just more consistent when it comes to attacking. Now in this scenario, we're going to have this imaginary person with a shrapnel and a grenade launcher on there. Now, we are looking at the Optimus Prime for our attack. Obviously, we've evaluated the Optimus Prime is our threat in this scenario, not Flame War, so we obviously want to focus on Optimus Prime. So now I have 5 attack in this mode and a grenade launcher on me, which brings this character's total to 9. Now, when I go to attack, this is a heavy orange list. I'm going to do basic math and say that at minimum, I flip 2 oranges, which is more than enough to KO this Optimus Prime, no problem. I mean, I'm doing 11 damage. I don't understand the problem. He only has 6 left. That's 17 total. He only has 14 health. He's definitely gone. So let's go ahead and finish the flips. All right, so I flipped my 2. The 2 that I definitely thought that I was going to flip, which are 2 basics. Again, I'm at 11 damage. He's definitely dead. Well, technically, no. The Optimus Prime is actually perfectly fine. Now, even having 6 damage already on him, yes, that does leave him with 8, but he didn't take into account that I have 2 base armor on me. So now that 2 automatically goes into effect. So yeah, he's doing 11, but now he's doing 10-9, which still is enough, but I still have to flip. And that person didn't take into account, oh, maybe I should have also played a supercharger onto this character to be able to get more damage because I didn't add the math for what he could possibly flip. So let's see what the flips are on this side, which are pretty basic. Now, even with those 2 blues, let's register the math. Now, we know Shrapnel is doing 11 damage. Now, going into that, we have 2 here, which puts us down to 9, and then we have 2 here, which puts us down to 7, meaning that even without counting Flame War as a character, Optimus Prime is going to take 7, putting Optimus Prime at 13, meaning that he's going to be able to survive the turn. So now that simple mess up in the math by not taking into account the armor and not taking account to the flip, it makes a huge difference. Now again, missing that tough, let's go ahead and see what it does now. I did shuffle all these decks, okay, so we got a white there, which is one of the worst things that can happen to this player here. You'd be able to get that white off the top, flips 2 more, oh man. All right. So Optimus Prime here is taking way less damage. Originally we were taking 7, now we're going to be taking 3 off of that. So we're taking a whole fat 4, which means that Optimus Prime is going to more than enough survive and probably be able to attack back for the win. But even without flipping that white, you get to see there how messed up that math can get, even with you doing so much damage and just looking at it, you're like, oh, okay, I'm doing 11, this character's clearly gone. You always have to take into account all of the other states on the board. Now, it may seem really simple, let's be honest. You're like, well, duh, he's got a Flame War, he obviously has tough 1. But then you have to think about what that could be. Now, let's say even in this scenario, this Optimus Prime happened to have 9 damage on him. Could it still make a huge difference? Well, yeah, sure, but let's go into it again, and you attack for that 11 damage, and yeah, he's already at 9, but what happens if you happen to flip double blues? What happens if this tough happened to work out completely differently and that Prime still lives because you didn't do your math correctly? And yes, there is a huge difference when it comes to different plays. Now, what I mean by that is there are safe plays, there are outs, which are something that you specifically have to do in order to get out of a bad situation that you're in, and then there is the balls play where you just go nuts for whatever reason, which I never recommend. But in this scenario, let's say the same thing. This Optimus Prime, though, instead was at 10 damage. Now we're looking at the same scenario. Let's take these two back, and let's take back the grenade launcher that's in the player's hand. Is this necessary for me to even play at this point? Now, if we're attacking for 5, we're thinking we're going to flip a base of 2, we're looking at 7. Now, taking 7 to account, he has 4, and then he has 2 armor, which means that he is going to have at least 6, meaning I'm only dealing 1 to him before his flips. 1's not enough to kill, so yes, I would say that the smart play in this situation would be to still play this grenade launcher and almost ensure the kill going up against the Optimus Prime. That would be the smart play. Obviously, making sure that you do your math in that previous scenario before playing that would make sure that you actually have to play it rather than going, okay, well, I'm going to hold on to this. I have a feeling I'm going to kill him anyway. I'm doing 7 at least when I flip. And then, yeah, sure, maybe you're really basing on the fact that you're going to flip a white on yourself and get 2 more. Maybe you're going to flip some double oranges, and that is what I go back to, that is the unsafe play, the balls play, where you just like try your best to throw it at your opponent and you're praying that it's going to work, and most of the time it honestly won't work, so I wouldn't recommend it. And then finally, the last scenario, untap that one. So finally, in this last scenario, let's say you do have this shrapnel and you're looking at this Prime who already has 11 damage on him. Well, now you know he has 3 left. You have to get in 3 points. Now, again, attacking here, you're looking at 7 damage if you're planning on just flipping a base 2. Now, taking that into account, you're at 7. He has 2 armor, so now you're looking at he's taking 5. Okay, well, 5 is enough to kill, but he does have to flip still. So let's say he flips 2 blues. Okay, well, now that 5 goes down to 3, which is just enough, but then again, he does have the tough, so you need to make sure, okay, no, I still need to play something to push damage, or I have to really, really hope that I happen to flip a white or a double orange to be able to get this KO and keep this grenade launcher in my hand to be safe to be able to use on Flame War. So it is a lot of math that you do have to take into account, but always making sure that you add the armor value of the character that you are attacking. And if they're not running heavy blue, then obviously just add that math, and then you're perfectly fine. Let's say this is, not this character, and this opponent's running an all orange list for their Optimus Prime, which would be very strange, but plausible. Then you know that when they have 11 damage on the character, they have 3 health left plus 2 armor, so your base 5 would definitely be enough. And then if you happen to flip, your 7 is going to make sure that this Prime definitely goes down. So again, always add the armor value in what your opponent could possibly flip.
Alrighty, so we talked about evaluating threats, we talked about your pips, we talked about doing math when it comes to attacking, but now I want to talk about playing around cards. Now this one is really big. It's really important. It's almost as important as choosing which threat you have to go for in a game. Now, it's really hard to kind of explain it because it varies a lot. I can't really use any scenario in this situation that makes a whole lot of sense. But when it comes to playing around a card, you have to think about what card could your opponent have that will absolutely wreck you on the next turn, and then try to avoid that. So it sounds really interesting. The way that I do it is once my opponent sits down and shows their team, I start to build their deck in my head. Now I'll go, okay, this is what his deck's going to do. Let's just keep using the Optimus Prime, Flame War, Hot Rod scenario. Okay, he's obviously going to be on heavy blue. We know he's relying on tough. Great. So we have tough, so we're going to see tons of blue pips. Now he has smaller start characters. Maybe he has the bigger they are. He does have a big character, which is Optimus Prime. Maybe he's got heavy-handed. All right, he's going to be taking some damage, but not dealing a lot of damage to his littler character, so maybe he's going to be on Energon X. And then what I'll start to do at that point is watch my opponent's cards. They'll play, oh, I played this Noble's Blaster. Okay, Noble's Blasters make sense. It's a blue card. It's a green card. They have 2 Autobots. This is on the list. If he's running these, maybe he's running a Scoundrel's Blaster. Now I can kind of guess that. And just watch as they flip cards, as they play cards. You start to look at their cards and start to build their deck. So now what your goal is play around those worst cards. If you know that your opponent is about to go next and they're about to just all-out attack you with this Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, what is the worst thing that this Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend can do that'll just completely blow out the game for you? Let's say you put up this easy character and you're like, oh man, if he has heavy-handed, though, he's going to have that Pierce 4 on my character, and then this character is just dead. He only has 4 health left. Okay, well, let me not feed him that character. Let me feed him this character, because even if he hits me really hard, this character is going to survive, whereas this other character would go down, and that would be a really bad play if he were to happen to have this in his hand, because the majority of the time that you don't want your opponent to have that card in their hand, they probably have that card in their hand. With this game only being 40 card decks, we tend to see our cards quite a bit. There's lots of synergies and lots of decks that help you draw, or there's even green pips that just make sure that you get those cards. So it's always making sure that you evaluate what your opponent can do to you and not let it happen to you. If you go, okay, he could totally have it, oh well, if he does, and then he does have it and you just lose the game, well, you knew he had it, you thought he could have had it, and yet you still played into it, where it could be a really, really big problem. Now, you guys will probably see it a lot in my gameplays, where I'll always be sitting there and I'm thinking. When I'm thinking and I'm on the defense, or even on offense sometimes, I will really try to decide what my opponent is going to be doing next, which is always a really big part in trading card games, but it's really important to try to see the game 2 or 3 turns out, going, okay, I'm going to attack this turn, he could possibly play this and then attack me back, but then that opens me up to be able to do this, and then kind of try to play that scenario. Let's say your opponent now throws a stick in the road and is like, ha, I'm going to do this instead, and you're like, okay, cool, he did this now, so this is what I'm guessing he's going to do, so this is what I'm going to try to do to prevent that. And it's really this chess match of going back and forth, and it's what can really separate a lot of players. And it's really difficult to do. You have to understand matchups. You have to understand how many times you're going to see a card, what could be really relevant. And then sometimes you're also really focused on one card, and then your opponent's like, curveball, play this one, I win. And you're like, yep, didn't even think about that one. So, like I said, I know it's a really difficult tip to really wrap your head around and to really understand, but it's something for you that just to start practicing on if you don't already do this. Is it next time you go and you're playing against, some casual games, or you're playing some more competitive games, really start to think about these things, and every single match will be different. The benefit to this game, in most places, play best of 3. If you're only playing best of 1, I really can't help you out. It's really difficult to decide what your opponent's going to be running in a best of 1, because by the time you probably figure it out, you've either lost or won the game, and then it's kind of over. Whereas a best of 3, okay, game 1, this is what he did. I only saw these cards. I didn't see this one that I was really afraid of, so now I can kind of take that card out of the equation, and I can focus on these cards. And then game 2, you can readdress that situation, and you can move forward from there. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the scrapyard, scrap piles. Some people can get kind of touchy about this, so I would approach it in a nicer manner, but you're always allowed to look at your opponent's scrap pile. Your opponent is always allowed to look at your scrap pile. They can do it every single turn. Now, sometimes it can get a little annoying if they're doing that, but they're probably looking for a very specific card to go into your scrap pile. They're really trying to avoid a very specific card. Like I was doing this the other night when I was playing up against someone. I needed them to not have a security checkpoint in their scrapyard. They were running Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, and I was like, if they get the security checkpoint, I just lose the game. So it was like, did you flip one last turn? No, cool. And then you can just always kind of evaluate it from there. Now, most of the time you can ask your opponent sometimes and say, can I see your scrap pile? And they go, yes. And then you just look through it for what you want, put it down. Don't be rude with how you handle their cards, because just remember they're not your cards. And then the same thing goes for your opponent. Make sure that they're handling your cards correctly, because some of these cards are pretty expensive and no one wants to have their cards like bent because their opponent's just pounding through their scrap pile. But also going through them can be kind of important, because if you've been doing the pip count on them to see if they're going to be able to proc, if you're like, man, I really need them to have this one card in there, you can look for that one card. Or if you're like, if he flips a double blue, I just lose the game here, let me look. Oh, he's got 4 double blues in his scrapyard. Maybe he's got 2 left in his deck. Okay, let me kind of try to navigate this play a little better. So it just gives you more knowledge on what your opponent has. It also kind of goes back to what I was saying in the previous one, where we talked about trying to understand what your opponent's deck is doing, what they have in their deck. You can easily go through their scrap pile once they're about to shuffle and most of their cards are in the scrap pile, and you can see 99% of their cards and go, okay, I know he's not running this card, that's awesome. Or I know this card's in his deck, and oh man, look, he's about to shuffle, he only has 1 card left in his deck, so he probably has it in his hand at this point, and then again, you know to play around those cards. Then the next one I want to talk about is attack sequences. Now this is really important as well. Now it may make sense, you know what your team is supposed to do. I'm supposed to always attack with this character first, this character second, and then finish off with this really big guy. But what happens if something messes up that scenario? Now you start to get into a really weird situation. Let's say you're yourself running Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend in this scenario, and then your opponent has an RC on the side, on their side of the table, and you're like, man, I'm a heavy blue deck. This RC is just going to straight up murder me. But I get to go first this game. I run Leap into Battles, heavy-handed. I have all these cards that are going to allow me to one-shot this RC. Should I flip Optimus Prime and should I take her out right now? The answer is probably yes. You probably should. Exposing your Prime, who has 14 health and a bunch of armor, especially when you're backing it up with a bunch of blues, is probably safe. Plus, you're getting rid of this really powerful character, again, evaluating the threats on your opponent's side. But then going, okay, I went, got rid of their RC. Now they have to go with this character. Now I get to go with this character. Then they go, I go, and then we get to straighten. And then now my Optimus Prime is now protected. I can throw out these little guys again and then wait for a really big hit because now one little guy goes, their guy goes, one little guy goes, their guy goes, and then now your Prime has free feeding to either of their two characters that are left. So the sequence of attacks is really important. One thing that's also really important is, let's say your opponent is running a 3-wide, you're running a 3-wide, they have a really big 13-star character like Starscream, and then you're running Optimus Prime, and you're like, man, if I go first, this Starscream is going to be able to hit my Optimus Prime first. He could one-shot me. Okay, I want you to go first, because now you're going to be tapped down, and my Optimus Prime gets to go and hit your Starscream and be completely safe. So turn sequence is a really big one. Plus also understanding once everyone untaps and readies up again, whose turn it's going to be, because now they get to go into a fresh untapped team. So always making sure that you really plan out, okay, I go, you go, I go, you go. Oh, that's a really bad scenario. Okay, let's have you go first, and then you go, I go, and then it comes down to like, do I KO this character this turn? Because if I KO his character this turn, then we're going to untap and then he gets free feedings on me. Or do I let this character survive for the turn, so when we untap, so he has to attack with it, and then we untap, and then now I get free feedings. A lot of those things can be really relevant, and sometimes not KOing an opponent's character is really the best play. Now the final thing that I want to talk to you guys about, which is a really big one, is tilt. Now, tilt can be really interesting. If you don't know what tilt is when you start to go down a really bad road. You're playing bad, your cards are flipping really bad, man, you had a really bad day at work, you know, something happened between you and your significant other, maybe you got into a car accident, maybe you even just went to Chipotle and had a really bad burrito. And these things can really add up and really affect your gameplay. Now, a lot of people seem to think that tilt can just happen in gaming, but really your life can also carry over into your tilt for your regular games. Like I said, maybe you just had a bad day, you sit down to play, and you're like, this is what I'm going to do, and then you look at your opponent, and his turn one where he gets to play a card, man, just Sonic Scramble, Sonic Scramble, Sonic Scramble, your hand's gone, their hand's full, and you've just lost the game. It's going to put you into a really bad spot mentally. Now, when you are mentally in a bad spot, you're angry, you're frustrated, you are no longer just playing the game. Now you're in this rage mode. You now have to beat your opponent. Now you have to beat your own deck, and then now you have to beat yourself, and you're probably going to lose the game. You're going to make really bad decisions because you're basing them on really bad thoughts. Another thing that can be really bad about tilt is that not only does it put you in a really bad spot, it puts your opponent in a really bad spot. They're no longer also having fun. Maybe you're also a rage guy, and maybe you throw tables or slam chairs or throw dice or curse, and then the people around you are now having a really bad time. So it can really affect just a lot of space, especially in most card game stores, let's be honest, when you're playing, it's not a very big space. So usually a loud person or something like that can really affect the area, and it can do just a lot of really bad things. So avoiding tilt is really important. Now, there are actually a lot of ways to avoid tilt. Some of them aren't answers you're going to want to hear if you find yourself in those situations, and some of them you're going to love. Now, how I deal with tilt is I try to just take a breath. I will put my hand down for a second, I'll just take a breath, and I'll just try to remember that it's an awesome, really fun game. Now, I naturally don't find myself falling to tilt because I always base it on this fact, that it is a game. I am here to have fun. I'm playing with characters that I think are really fun. My opponent is here to do the same thing, and that's just have fun. Can't even tell you guys how many times that I've gone for like the perfect play. My opponent's character has lived with 1 health, and then they've just returned beat me, and I've just lost the game. Because it's come down to an RNG situation where I'm like, okay, I have to flip good, they have to flip bad, or they have to not have this card, and they just always have it. And yeah, it can be frustrating to go, man, I would have won had this one simple play not happened, but I lost. And that's okay, because that's the fun part of this game, is that you really can't control that side of it and go, man, you know what? Good for you. That was actually really cool. Sucks I lost, but you won. That's awesome. Good for you. So really just taking a second out, taking a step back, and just really just taking a breath and trying to focus on the good things. Even if you need to step away from the table, even if you need to go outside and smoke, or you just need to go outside and clear your head for a second, you need to go buy a bottle of water, from the counter or whatever else, just say, hey, to your opponent, I'm starting to tilt. Can you give me 2 seconds? Hopefully your opponent says yes. If they don't, it's going to be really rough for you. But it's just time to take a moment, take that breath, and just move forward with your game. Now the next thing is coming up with words to help yourself. Things that you can repeat to yourself to get you out of the funk. Say, I'm playing really good. I'm playing really good. This is just RNG, man. It's just RNG. It's not my fault. I'm playing good. Or if it's, today I had a really good day, man. This game just doesn't go my way. It's cool. Next game. Next game. Look on the next game. Think about the next game. And just really focus on whatever words that help you calm yourself down to get back to that mental state that you really want to be into, and just really focus up. Think about it. Go, okay, you know what? We're good. We're good. Now I got steaks in for me at home, or hey, I'm going to be hitting Chipotle on my way home. That's really cool. That's super awesome. Even if I lose this game, we're totally cool, man. I'm happy for this person. Let's move on. And then the last one, which like I said, you guys may not like, just scooping. If you know that you're not going to get back into a better mental state, if you know that the game is lost and you're just going to rage and you're going to have this outburst and just this really bad moment where you're going to possibly say something wrong or do something wrong, just scoop, say, you win the game, shake their hand, and go, thank you for the games, and move off to the side. Either you stop playing for the night if you don't think it's going to go better for you, or just scooping that game, saying you win, and then going and watching someone else's game, going outside and taking a break for a moment until the next round, and just accepting it and moving on. Say, I know this isn't going to get any better. I know I have no way out of this scenario, and I know I'm just going to get so mad if you play this espionage next turn and take away my green pip card, my enigma. If you play that, I'm just going to go off. Don't allow it to happen to yourself, because you are ultimately in control of yourself when it comes to tilt and when it comes to your emotions. So don't fall victim to them yourselves. And then the last thing is, in the same scenario of you scooping, if you find yourself every single game just tilting and tilting and tilting and raging and tilting, maybe you should just take a break from the game for a while. Maybe you should take a week off. Maybe you should take a couple of days off. I don't know how often you play. Let's say you play 4 or 5 times a week, then maybe just take a break for the week and go, I just really need to collect myself, man. I just need to sit down, I need to look at some of my decks. I just need to build a little better. I need to just do a couple of these things, and I just need to take a break. It's probably for the better. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help your opponent to just keep forcing through this scenario that you're not going to get through. Sometimes tilt can be overwhelming. Sometimes tilt, you can't really fight back. And those are the times that you just need to recognize it and move on. Because like I said, it's not going to help you out if you're every single game you're like, oh, I lost, okay, let's play again. Oh, I lost, okay, let's play again. You're just going to continue to make bad decisions in the game. Your opponent's just going to feel bad for kind of beating you up over and over and over. They're no longer having fun in the game. And you're removing really the core of just gaming in general. It's to have fun. We have to remember that that's what it's about. It's not about going out there and beating your opponent and winning and taking home the trophy every single time. It's really just about fun. If you're playing in a tournament like that, obviously the scenario changes. It's a lot tougher to fight tilt when there's stakes on the line. It's a lot tougher to want to help your opponent when stakes are on the line. I get all that stuff. That's all gray area things. So that's a whole different conversation to have. But tilt's a big one. I've seen it a lot. Lots of different games. It is a very, very real thing. So I would just advise you with all of these previous tips with tilt to just try to get in a better spot for it. So that's all I'm going to say about tilt. So I don't want to end this video on a negative note, so I want to end it on a positive note, and I want to tell you guys one of my favorite things about this card game, and it is the community. Now I want you guys to go down to the comment section below and let me know one of your guys' favorite things about this card game. It's really nice just to see all the positivity behind it, all the different things that people love about it, but ultimately the community. You guys means so much to me. It is really, really awesome to be able to go through, read my comments, respond to you guys, be able to make content that you guys want specifically, all the thumbs up that you guys give me. Like, I make zero money from the channel, so it's just a really big hobby for me, and it's for me to stay connected with you guys in the community, and then I get to go and play in local stores, I get to help people deck build, I get to help people with plays, just get better and stuff like that, and it really, really just, it really warms my heart to be able to do things like this. To be able to get all the nostalgia from all the original stuff and talk to people about, like, you know, the comic books and the toy line and just how we grew up and who our favorite people were and all our favorite time in that one thing. It really just means a lot to me. It means even more than actually playing the game. The game is just a really nice icing on the cake to be able to sit down and play with these fantastic characters that I love, play with this art that I absolutely love, and be able to just deck build and really take advantage of these characters and their power levels, and then just pit my best against my opponent's best is really fantastic. So that's where we're going to be ending the video. There are some tips, I believe it's 10 tips, that I did want to give you guys about the trading card game. It's been an absolute blast. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, a like would be greatly appreciated. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and join this awesome community that we do have. I'll catch you guys in the next one.